Well, if you listen to the left and their press, which is basically 90%, according to them, President Trump has too much to think about to get involved with any type of annexation plan that Israel may have, and that was supposed to have taken place back on July 1st, but of course was delayed. Now, of course, their story is that he's got way too much going on in his own country to be worrying about something like the Middle East peace process. Now, certainly that may very well be true. I have heard through various reports that he plans on taking a little bit more time to create the maps that need to be created as far as the annexation is concerned, and sit down and decide with Israel which of the settlements that are going to be annexed. I don't believe that they're going to be annexing great amounts of settlements all at once. I think that, in fact, I've heard that President Trump has asked Israel to give a little bit of their own land in exchange for the settlements that they're going to annex. So whatever Israel decides to annex, proportionally they're going to have to give up some land. At least that's what the rumor is. Now, the Palestinians are saying that they do want to come back to the negotiations table, but it must be done under the supervision of the UN. In other words, what they're saying is the U.S. is out as far as a negotiating partner is concerned, but I think that's a non-starter for the Trump administration. And unless they change their tune, I don't believe they will prevent Israel from annexing certain amounts of land or settlements that, frankly, were going to be a part of Israel anyway. That's something else that you need to understand, is that most of the settlements, if not all, will continue to be Israel's when this deal is all said and done. In other words, there will be no dismantling of settlements or turning certain blocks of land that is presently being occupied by Israel over to the Palestinians. None of that will be handed over. It's just a matter of whether Israel will annex it now or later. It's going to happen. But there will be, in some way, some land exchange, and that hasn't been worked out yet, in which whatever portion of the West Bank that Israel does ultimately annex, they will have to give up a portion of that, if not all of it, in other lands, probably along the Egyptian-Israeli southern border. But as of right now, I don't see any change in the directions of the peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. And frankly, I think they're trying to do the same thing with the Trump administration as they did with the previous administrations. That is, give a hint as to the fact that they're coming back to the negotiating table, such as a stalling tactic, and see if the Trump administration bites. I don't think they will. I think that before the month is over, I think that annexation map will be redrawn, and that there will be a number of settlements that will now be in the possession of Israel. And at some point in time, I think the Palestinians will figure out that they are going to have to sit down and talk to the Trump administration, along with Israel, and a number of other players will also be involved, probably the European Union. I'm sure that the quartet will play a part, and also leading members of the moderate Arab world. But that's where we're at right now in that situation. There's something else I also want to talk about, and that's this article coming out of the Jerusalem Post. And the title of it is Russia, Turkey, and Iran Coordinate Anti-U.S. Syria Policy, Slamming Israel. And of course, who would have thought that these three nations, the same nations that are described in the Bible, would be coming together in these last days when Israel has become a nation again, when they've repossessed Jerusalem, when the European Union has been reunited, when there is a peace process going on between Israel and many. And as I've said, who would have thought that those three nations would be on Israel's northern border ready to attack? But evidently Russia, Turkey, and Iran have held a virtual meeting to coordinate efforts in Syria. And reading from the article, it says, they have been holding similar meetings since 2017 as part of what is called the Astana process. Their goals have increasingly converged, and their statement this week appeared aimed at undermining the U.S. role in eastern Syria and isolating U.S. partner forces. The statement also condemned Israel for actions in Syria. They called Israel's actions destabilizing, but did not pinpoint which exact Israeli actions they meant. Now, the United States is in Syria. Well, I should say they're in the Middle East. But they have a base that is located somewhere near the Jordan-Syrian border. And going on with the article, it says in October of 2019, Turkey threatened U.S. forces in Syria and ordered the U.S. to leave, attacking the SDF until Russia and the Syrian regime brokered a ceasefire with Ankara that saw Russia deploy forces to areas formerly under U.S. influence. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has vowed to withdraw from Syria, but has been critiqued for abandoning U.S. partners who sacrificed thousands of lives to fight ISIS. Now, it should also be mentioned that Turkey is one of the United States' NATO partners, and for them to partner with Russia, Iran, and other terrorist forces in Syria is somewhat of a shock, but it's kind of expected. And when I say it's kind of expected, because that's what the Bible says would happen during these last days of these converging events. And speaking of converging events, don't look for this COVID-19 virus to go away anytime soon. And no, it's not because of President Trump. He has done better than anyone else in the world in handling this pandemic when everyone else is just allowing their people just to die. President Trump has got all the ventilators and different equipment necessary to minimize the loss. He's put together a rapid response team to deal with the getting a vaccine together. I mean, the bottom line is it normally takes years for a vaccine to be found and given to the masses, but it looks like it's probably going to be before the end of the year that they will have a vaccine. And certainly I applaud him for that. But you know what? Now it's being reported that there is another potential pandemic that is heading our way again. It's a variation of the swine flu that scientists are keeping an eye on. I believe it's coming out of China as well. But this is what the Bible said, that when these converging events begin to take place, look for other signs to accompany it, which again, pandemics, plagues, certainly earthquakes, you're going to be looking at famine. We're getting back to the story about Russia, Turkey, and Iran converging together. Now, we don't know when this war that's described in Ezekiel 38 and 39 will take place, but the Bible says that it'll be in the latter days. And that war could take place at any moment, but you should remember that no matter when it happens, whether it happened before the tribulation period, during the tribulation period, or at the end of the tribulation period, right now Israel is a nuclear power. So whenever Russia decides, I should say Russia, Iran, and Turkey decides to attack Israel, they're going to do so with Israel being a very dangerous and lethal combatant that can, I believe they've got, it's estimated they have between 80 and 200 nuclear warheads. So when Russia does decide to come, they will decide to do so with the possibility that a nuclear war could break out. So even though the description in Ezekiel 38 sounds like it will be a conventional war, this is definitely something that they need to keep in mind, and those who are studying Bible prophecy need to keep in mind. And here's something else that you need to take with you before this video is over, and that is that Special Representative for International Negotiations, Evie Berkowitz, returned to Washington on Wednesday and met with senior advisor Jared Kushner to brief him on his meetings in Israel. Berkowitz met 3 times with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, alternate Prime Minister and Defense Minister Benny Gantz, and Minister of Foreign Affairs Gabi Ashkenazi, I guess is how you pronounce his name. Kushner is expected to hold a series of discussions with his team before taking the subject to President Trump. A person familiar with the work of the peace team said that it could linger into next week. One reason is that no discussions are scheduled for the weekend when the U.S. will celebrate its Independence Day. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the plans of the Trump administration is that whatever the Israeli government decides to annex, they are looking to give the Palestinians an equal gesture so that the Palestinians don't come back on them and say that the situation was just a land grab. So the question is whether or not the Israeli government will exercise annexation before the end of the month, or is this going to turn into just another endless back and forth where the Palestinians come to the table, then drop out about 2 to 3 weeks in, and then we take another break for another year or two, and they continue to do the same over and over again. Well, I hope that's not the case. I don't think it will be, but we'll have to wait and see And it'll all be determined by how the Trump administration handles this first annexation attempt, or whether they let the Palestinians get away with the same tactics they pulled for years. But that's where we are up to this point, waiting to see where what the next step is in this early July annexation, and when and if it will go through, and if the Palestinians will come to the table. Frankly, with me, I would think that the Trump administration will allow this annexation to take place and continue to put pressure upon the Palestinians to come back, or continue to annex more land until they do decide to come back. And frankly, I hope that's the way in the direction they go. And if you don't know the Lord, I would suggest that you make that decision as quickly as possible. Time is short, and the bottom line is that we don't know when we're going to die. Secondly, if you have liked this video, I would hit the notification button, like this video, and please share it with as many people as you can. And for those who do not have a copy of my Tribulation Period Survival Guide, go down to the description section of this video, get your paperback version, or you can get the free digital version. Just click the link that is provided, it takes you to my website, and you'll be directed to whichever you prefer. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.